We're talking about pressure today. Who's under the most pressure to win this week in the Pac-12? I think it's the two Oregon schools.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with our media rights and soon to be mostly team-free. But until then, beloved and loaded Conference of Champions, like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review, please and thank you wherever you listen to or watch the show. Which today is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Pressure, predictions, all coming up on today's show, but we're starting with pressure, which largely comes from the outside at some level. And players and coaches can pretend, well, we don't listen to the outside noise. We just go in there, play our game. They hear at least some of it. They know at least some of it, or at least have the wherewithal to arrive at the same conclusions that we do. So why do I say Oregon State and Oregon, not necessarily in that order, are under the most pressure to win this week in a full slate with 6 Pac-12 games? Oregon State and Oregon both are playing to keep their college football playoff hopes alive. Oregon State fans might be just happy with getting to the Pac-12 championship game. I know there are plenty of them out there that realize, hey, we have a favorable schedule. And hey, it's still good enough to where if we win out, we're getting into the playoff. Oregon State is mentioned on more than one national show as a dark horse college football playoff contender. And you can't have 2 losses and get into the 14 playoff. It's the beauty of that particular format and why I lament that it is going away. So they're playing for that. Oregon is playing for that after the loss to Washington as well. And I think those stakes are a tad higher. It also matters greatly in the context of the Pac-12 championship discussion. Now, in that particular conversation, the pressure is more on Oregon than Oregon State, because not having a head-to-head win with Arizona is less consequential than not having a head-to-head win with Utah. If Oregon loses this game against Utah on Saturday, getting to the Pac-12 championship game now requires a lot of help because you've lost a head-to-head with Washington and a head-to-head with Utah. And those are 2 teams that currently would be on track to get to Las Vegas, and you need the Utes to lose 2 more times, or at least 1 more time, and then set up tiebreakers and, yada, yada, yada. I mean, Oregon won the head-to-head last year, and Utah got in because of tiebreakers and this, that, and the other thing. So that's possible. But you get to keep control of your own destiny if you win. That's the sort of pressure that faces these teams every week. They are both, Oregon and Oregon State, road favorites going into these matchups. Both of them. Oregon by about a touchdown, 6.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. I'll make my pick on that in every game later in the show. And Oregon State at about 3.5 down in the desert against Arizona. Both should be outstanding football games. But I want to talk about Oregon State for a minute, because this is a program that many fans know, some may not. So I'll just give a little reminder here, as I often do. The Beavs are one of 3 programs, all from the former Pac-12 North, to have never appeared in a Pac-12 championship game. And of course, this is everybody's last opportunity to do so. And I talked on yesterday's show that clarity for 2024 and beyond is potentially en route within the next several weeks, but still, that's a ways off, and their attention should be on the here and now as Arizona is looming. And Arizona is a good football team. Oregon State has never been there before. This is a team we all know is capable of getting to that conference championship game. What they have to avoid is a stumble in a game like this. You avoid this one, and suddenly you go down the stretch, and they'll be favored in every game they play except for Washington and Oregon. And if they're able to go 1-1 there, that's a 10-2 regular season if they hold their own elsewhere. And that could be good enough to get into the Pac-12 championship game when you've got the head-to-head win over Utah, when you've got the head-to-head win over UCLA. And Oregon State wants to be a team that's capable and is capable right now of competing for a Pac-12 championship. If you want to do that, you win this football game. It doesn't always have to be pretty. It does not have to be the best game that Oregon State plays all year. You're on the road against a good team, hostile environment. You're not going to play your best game every single week. Look at Washington. Last week at home, played horrendously, but they won the game, and they're 7-0, and they're going to win again this week against Stanford. And the last team to go undefeated in the Pac, no one's ever done it in the Pac-12. Oregon, the year before the Pac-12 was formed in 2010, went 9-0 in conference play when they played for the national championship. They had a game that year at Cal, back when Cal was better than what they are right now. At Cal, offense did nothing. It was very similar to what Washington did last week against ASU. The Huskies were at home, the Ducks were on the road. But Oregon that year had a game in which their offense was stifled. They scored one offensive touchdown, and they won the game 15-13 on the back of a Cliff Harris punt return and a missed Cal field goal on a false start, by the way, by the kicker. He made the first attempt, called for the false start, backs up, and then misses. When you are a team that's going to play at a conference championship level, you're going to have those sorts of games. And if you are truly good enough as a team and as a program, if you are truly in a position to compete at that level, you find a way to win the football game. And maybe Oregon State comes out guns and blazing and they prove me wrong and they go out and win the game by double digits, which I think is within the range of outcomes. Maybe they win by 17, maybe they win by 20. That would be a heck of a statement. But this is the sort of game that Oregon State, if you want to compete for a conference championship, if you want to have that sort of season and know what those sorts of seasons are like, you win this football game no matter what. On the other side for Oregon, they have the heartbreaking loss to Washington for the second year in a row, and they're out to prove they're good enough to get to the college football playoff, which I think they are. I think they absolutely are. Is that a given? No. Utah's not going to roll over here. Now, if you were to look at point spreads, you'd say that Oregon is under more pressure than Oregon State. Probably, because Oregon is about a touchdown favorite over Utah. Oregon State's only about a 3.5 favorite over Arizona. I lean 51-49, a little bit more pressure on the Beavs, because the optics in college football, which we all know matter a great deal, of losing to an unranked Arizona team that has 3 losses, I know the context behind it. I know how good of a win it will be if Oregon State wins. The rest of the country might not. That's something you always got to consider. Nobody outside of the Pac-12 footprint's talking about Arizona in a major way. Not the case here on this show, of course. Oregon, though, if they lose to Utah, that's still a team that, hey, could end up playing in a New Year's Six Bowl, could have a 10-2 season perhaps, but would certainly lose their key goals, most notably getting into the college football playoff. And they would fail to control their own destiny to get into the Pac-12 championship game. So you can phrase and frame that pressure however you want, but I think those two schools are playing this week in highly competitive games on the road where the pressure is squarely on their side. And at some level, here's the dangerous part of it. Both games have the home side playing with just a little bit of a, what have we got to lose? Now, I think that exists more on the Arizona side of things because they're just trying to make a bowl game, whereas Utah is trying to maybe make the college football playoff. But if Utah doesn't make the playoff, if they lose another game this year, can you look back and say the season was a disappointment? No, you can't. You lost Cam Rising and Brant Keithy and Thomas Yasmin and just go down the list. Now Lander Barton is out. They've got an injury list longer than a lot of teams' healthy lists, it seems. It's actually crazy that they're even in this spot to begin with. And if they lose, look, it's going to be a disappointing feeling, but it won't be an outright loser feeling on Monday's show here on Locked On Pac-12 for the Utah fans if they don't beat Oregon. It'll be, yeah, well, turns out we needed Cam Rising. Turns out the guy who was supposed to be our starting quarterback, we actually needed him to win football games. That's where they have a little bit of that, what do we got to lose? People are doubting us again. All right, let's do it. With Oregon State and Arizona, that Arizona team has definitely got a, not playing for a play. We're trying to build this program up right now. We've had some marquee wins. Washington State last week, UCLA last year. We've had some big time wins. Now let's just see what we can accomplish this season. I'm excited for both games. I think they are going to be absolutely outstanding. Another game that you shouldn't sleep on, though, USC at Cal. How do you even look at that football game? Well, we're going to look at it and then some. you should be giving a look to Athletic Brewing Company because they are changing the game when it comes to non-alcoholic beers. They have this wild concept at Athletic Brewing Company. Ready? They're making great tasting and award-winning non-alcoholic beers that beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. I know. Over 50 styles of craft that are non-alcoholic. IPAs, golden sours, and more. They've got everything, and they're fit for all times. You can watch a big game, be watching your kids' game, tackling work or working out, whatever you're doing. Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews are fit for every single moment. No hangovers, ever. Not a thing that happens, and they taste great. First-time customers, go use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or get them online at athleticbrewing.com. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Ticketing can be really tough. Really, really tough. Game Time makes it a lot easier. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Maybe it's a Pac-12 football game this week. Maybe it is. Game Time's got what you need. The fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okie dokie, guaranteed second segment sips to propel us forward into, you guessed it, our second segment. So USC faces, I think, the third most pressure of any team in the conference this week. I think Oregon State and Oregon are kind of 1A, 1B. And I think that USC is right there in third or second, whatever you want to, however you want to categorize that. USC is not going to the college football playoff this year. They could still win the Pac-12. Win a New Year's Six game. That'd be a good season by a lot of team standards. Not exactly by the Trojans. But you're going into a game against Cal. Lowly Cal. 3-4 Cal. Just the California Golden Bears. And USC is not as big of a favorite as they might have been when the season first kicked off back on August 26th. And I look at this game and say, okay, so USC doesn't have their ultimate goal to play for, but still have attainable goals, like getting to the Pac-12 championship game, like winning the conference on their way out the door as they go to the Big Ten. How motivated are they going to be? I don't know. I'm really curious to see. I suspect they want to prove to themselves and perhaps to some of their critics that they're better than what they've showed each of the last couple of weeks. But if USC loses this game, it would be a pretty large upset. I don't know the last time Cal beat USC. It's been a minute. It has been a minute. 2021 is the last time they beat USC. But when USC has been good, the last time Cal beat them, yeah, you'd have to go back a little ways. But I look at this matchup and just wonder about USC's motivation level across the board and how they're going to come out. That'll be telling for what they can do the rest of the season because they can still control their own destiny to get to the Pac-12 championship game. And USC is integral to what the Pac-12 championship picture will look like, right? That's why I'm so intrigued by this game. Is every reason is there for USC to just kind of throw in the towel. Hey, whatever, we can't get to the playoff. Maybe Caleb Williams should sit out. Yeah, that ridiculousness gladly got a lot of pushback. But I think that with USC, they still have to play at Oregon. They still have to play UCLA. They still have to play Washington at home. Are they going to be able to win any of those games? I think this game will tell us how confident we feel in the Trojans' ability to win any of those matchups going forward. So that brings us to this week's edition of the Pac-12 Prime Picks, which is an entity I created since hosting this show Did not get where I wanted to last year, just a hair under 50%, about 48%, and had gotten myself back to a nice spot going into last week at 17-17, ready for a strong finish. Yeah, it didn't happen. That strong finish got off to a rough start. There's still time. Now, if you're someone who wants to come in here and fade the picks, I can't say I blame you. Just don't come crying to me when I have a bounce back this week. I like these picks. Let's start with the game of the week in college football. It's where College Game Day will be in Salt Lake City, Oregon. Favored by 6.5, according to our friends over at FanDuel Official Sportsbook of Locked On. Favored by 6.5 in Salt Lake City. Nobody has won at Rice-Eccles Stadium with fans in the stands since 2018. Before the year, I thought this was one of the games in the regular season Oregon would lose. I felt that way, predicated on the belief Cam Rising would be playing by now. Well, he's not playing whatsoever. And I think this is a great matchup of a couple of good defenses, especially Utah's, a great offense in Oregon, and a savvy head football coach in Kyle Whittingham. I lean Oregon here, as long as it's under a touchdown. If it were over, I would probably go with the Utes. At Oregon minus 6.5, I'll take the Ducks. I'll take the Ducks to win the game 31-20. And yes, if the line were at 7.5, I would feel like Utah would have a chance to cover there. Look, I think this is a close game. I think this is a hard-fought affair. Here's where I land on why I'm leaning with my Ducks. Oregon's offense versus Utah's offense. I trust Oregon's immensely more. Now, you might say, well, Utah's got a great defense. Oregon's isn't exactly made up of a bunch of scrubs. They're vastly improved from last year. They held Utah's offense with Cam Rising to just 10 points, and the defense scored a touchdown at Autzen Stadium to get him to 17. I think that the way Cam Rising played then is the way Oregon's defense is capable of making Bryson Barnes play now. You have a veteran quarterback who proved against Washington and Texas Tech he's not going to be rattled on the road. So that home environment is still effective for Utah. Don't get me wrong. It's not as effective as it might have been against, say, Dante Moore, for instance, or Graham Mertz. Bo Nix has made 54 starts in his college career. If it comes down to, hey, both teams are really good against the run and it's quarterback against quarterback, which I think is kind of likely that neither team is going to run the football great, and it'll come down to, hey, which quarterback can better lead their offense. I lean towards Bo Nix over Bryson Barnes there. So I'll take the Ducks 31 with a late field goal to push that to 2 possessions. 31-20. I think it is close throughout. Will not be shocked at all if Utah loses the game in any way, shape, or form. But I do like the Ducks there. Next one, Cal plus 10.5 against USC at home off a bye. Now, Caleb Williams is still the best player on the football field. I know he's had 2 bad games in a row relative to the ridiculously high standard that he has set for himself. He did have the go-ahead rushing touchdown, but everyone's, he was set up by a punt return. I think he was going to be able to make a play no matter what. He's quite the playmaker. Eventually, I feel like Lincoln Riley is going to reel him back in and get him playing the way he's capable of. 10.5 points, though, off a bye at home. Give me the Bears to cover that number. Final score prediction, USC 31, Cal 24. Here's why I feel good about the Bears and why I can see a world, by the way, in which Cal emerges victorious against the Trojans. I don't know what we're going to see from Cal at the quarterback position. I don't love that. I also know that if Bryson Barnes can have success on the road, anybody on Cal's offensive side of the quarterback position can have success at home, whether that's Fernando Mendoza, whether that's Ben Finley, whether that's Sam Jackson. It'll probably be a smattering of all 3. Mendoza has been pretty good the last couple of games, but you know what Cal does really well? Cal runs the football. And when Cal's offense is at its best, they're running the football. They run for 195 yards a game. Did you know that the 3rd best rushing team in the Pac-12 this season is the 3-4 California Golden Bears? Yeah, that's right. Those California Golden Bears. USC, meanwhile, last in rushing defense in the Pac-12, 164 yards a game. I think Cal is able to hang around on the back of their ground game. I suspect their quarterback, whoever it is, will turn the ball over 1 or 2 too many times to win the football game, and Caleb Williams will have a good performance against a Cal defense that, has had its ups and downs this season, shall we say. DJ Uyunglele had success on this field in a big way and put up a 50 burger. I think Caleb Williams and USC can do that. I don't think they're going to, just to be clear, because I think Cal's going to run the football, take the air out of the clock a little bit. Cal to cover the 10.5 points. I like having the hook on my side there. USC 31, Cal 24. Jaden Ott and Isaiah Afonso could be in for a really, really big game. Still more to get to. Oh, goodness gracious. I don't know what to do with the other 4 games because I have to pick 3 of them and I got to leave one out. I'm leaving out Washington State. I will tell you why I'm doing just that after I tell you about Prize Picks, which is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. That's it. You don't have to bet against thousands of other players and pros and sharks. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for first deposit match up to $100. That's right. First deposit match up to $100. prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Next pick in what I have described all week and continue to believe is the sneaky best game of the week. Oregon-Utah is going to be fantastic. I think there's a greater potential for a team to win by 2 scores in either direction, frankly, in that game than Arizona hosting Oregon State. Wildcats are getting 3.5 points at home, and I like it. And I like Arizona to win the game outright. This was one of my preseason upset predictions. There are upsets in conference play every single year. And if you'd predicted a lot of them ahead of time, you would have gotten pushback. I don't think I even get a lot of pushback. Carter Baines of BeaverBlitz.com on the show earlier this week said he thinks Arizona is winning this game. Both teams are coming off a bye. I don't trust Oregon State's defense away from Reser Stadium. Why? Because I keep seeing it away from Reser Stadium against Power 5 teams not play well. Maybe they're able to get right. Maybe with a bye week, they figure things out. If you tell me they hold Arizona under 23 points, then I think that Oregon State wins the football game because Arizona's defense, while improved, is still going up against a capable offense with underrated wide receivers in Silas Bolden and Anthony Gould. And DJ Uyunglele has been playing much better after a 3-ish game stretch where he really struggled. Arizona, though, at home, this is a go either way game. This is a coin flip kind of game. Obviously, I won't be shocked if Oregon State wins. I think this is going to be Arizona with another marquee win in the Jed Fish era. Wildcats 31, Beavs 30, the final in Tucson, in what should be an outstanding college football game. Next one, UCLA, favored by 17.5 against Colorado at home. UCLA last week beat Stanford 42-7. Ethan Garbers was the starting quarterback. I don't think it matters who starts or plays at quarterback in this game. Here's the problem. You know who can't stop the run in this conference? USC and Colorado. Stanford's not great either, but USC and Colorado. You know what UCLA does? They boast one of the 10 best rushing offenses in the conference. They only trail Oregon in rushing yards per game. This is a physical defense with a great front four against a horrendous Colorado offensive line. I don't love the extra half-point hook. I just think UCLA is playing at a high level right now. Coming off that win against Stanford, I think they're feeling good. And they're playing a team that we know is on Stanford's level. That's where Colorado is. Lost to them at home. They're both bottom 3 teams in the league. That's where they're at. This is a bad matchup for Colorado. If you're going to beat a team that's better than you, this is not the one to do it. Because UCLA's front four, I think, is going to dominate in this game. Sean Lewis, the offensive coordinator for the Buffs, has to be at his absolute best if Colorado is going to have a chance. But give me UCLA at home, covering the 17.5, big number to swallow. I'll swallow it. UCLA 45, Colorado 20. Washington and Washington State are the 2 games that I have left to choose from for this week's edition of the Pac-12 Prime Picks. Some Husky fans not thrilled with me continuing to pick the dogs. Guess what? I'm doing it again. I'm doing it. I'm sorry if it goes the other way. I'm just telling you what I think. And I think Stanford is not a great football team. And they were reminded of that last week. They had their big win against Colorado. Awesome. Great for Stanford. Sign of good things to come. All that positivity, no doubt, warranted for the Cardinal here. Washington is not favored by 26.5 points for the second straight week. I'm going to pick them to cover for the second straight week. Because eventually, I do think they are going to cover one of these big numbers and play the way they did early in the season. I think they recapture that momentum here against a pretty weak Stanford team. Huskies 49, Cardinal 21. Those are the Pac-12 Prime Picks here for Week 8. Now, the last game I want to talk about is Washington State, -5.5 at Arizona State. Washington State is the better team. I don't know if they are the side. I cannot get behind numbers on the road that are between 4 and 6, as in greater than 4 but less than 6. 5 or 4.5, 5, 5.5. Don't like them. Weird numbers, weird spot. I lean towards ASU covering. My score prediction is Arizona State loses this game to Wazoo 28-24. I like the way Cam Ward played on the road last week against Oregon a lot. Having Lincoln Victor back is a really, really nice addition. Arizona State's defense is good, and I just don't have as strong of a sense in this game, so I'm going to stay away on the prime picks. I do think Washington State wins, and they pick up what I think will be the first of 4 consecutive for the Cougs. At worst, Washington State should go into the Apple Cup at 7-4, and at best, they could go in 8-3. They're going to be favored in each of their next 4 games, and they should be. And I hope the Cougs get a win here and stop the 3-game skid. Arizona State is in a rebuild, losing season, and everybody understands that. Washington State, you got to have this one. You got to have this one, or dropping 4 straight with 1 to Arizona and 1 to Arizona State. That would not be a great situation for the Cougs to be in. I do think they get it done this week. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Enjoy the football, and until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.